Alarms blared throughout the Vrock city. News of Trade Minister Dex's betrayal spread quickly. The human team worked without rest, giving blood and helping Dr. Sue prepare the treatment for the sick hatchlings. "We need to find Dex," Hyun said to Karak. "He might still be on the planet." "Hunt Master Zrek is already tracking him," Karak replied. "No one escapes our best hunters." As if summoned by his name, a massive Vrox with jet-black scales entered the hatchery. He wore minimal armor and carried no visible weapons, but his presence made everyone stand straighter. "Huntmaster," Karak greeted him with respect. Zrek's yellow eyes scanned the humans before settling on Hyun. "I need one of you," he said, his voice deep. "The prey is clever. He knows our methods, but he does not know yours." Before anyone could respond, a new alarm sounded. A Vrock's guard rushed in. "Ships are entering our system. They do not respond to hails." Karak turned to the humans. "You said the Union would not attack us." "That's not the Union," Jun said, checking his scanner. "The energy signatures don't match Union ships." Commander Hack's voice came through on the emergency channel. He had been stationed on the orbiting human vessel. "This is Commander Hack to ground team. We have 5 unknown vessels approaching Vrox Prime. They're heavily armed." "Dex's allies," Elder Vrex said grimly. "They come to finish what he started." "We need to defend the hatchery," Hyun said, "and continue the treatment." Karak nodded. "Some of you must stay with the young. Others will join Huntmaster Zrek to find Dex. He may know how to stop the attack." "I'll go with Zrek," Hyun volunteered. "Me too," Jun said, checking his weapon. "The rest of us will continue the treatment," Jaiho said, already back at work with a hatchling. Huntmaster Zrek led Hyun and Jun out of the hatchery and into the dense forest surrounding the Vrock city. The trees were enormous, their trunks wider than 10 humans standing side by side. "Dex went this way," Zrek said, sniffing the air. "He carries a scent not of this world." They moved quickly through the forest. Zrek's movements were silent despite his size. He stopped often to check for signs only he could see. "He knows where he's going," Zrek said after an hour of tracking. "This is not random flight." "He must have a ship hidden somewhere," Jun suggested. Suddenly, Zrek dropped to a crouch. Hyun and Jun did the same. "Ahead," Zrek whispered. "He is not alone." Through the thick vegetation, they could see a small clearing. In it stood Dex and 3 aliens of different species. They surrounded a communication device. "The fleet will be in position soon," one alien was saying. "The Vrock's defenses cannot withstand a coordinated attack." "And the humans?" Dex asked. "Regrettable casualties," another alien replied. "But necessary. We cannot allow a human-Vrock's alliance. It would shift the balance of power in the galaxy." Hyun's heart raced. This was bigger than sick hatchlings. It was about preventing humans and Vrock's from becoming allies. Zrek signaled for them to spread out. But as Jun moved, a branch snapped under his foot. Dex's head whipped around. "We have company," he shouted. The aliens drew weapons. "Run!" Zrek roared, charging forward. The clearing erupted in chaos. Energy weapons fired, cutting through trees. Zrek moved with incredible speed, taking down one alien before the others could aim properly. Jun fired his weapon, hitting another alien in the arm. But Dex was escaping, running toward what looked like a hidden ship under camouflage netting. Hyun chased after him. He was almost within reach when a group of Vrock's hatchlings suddenly appeared in a small hollow directly in Dex's path. They had wandered from a secondary hatchery nearby, unaware of the danger. Dex raised his weapon, aiming at the defenseless young. Without thinking, Hyun threw himself between Dex and the hatchlings. Pain seared through his shoulder as Dex fired. "Foolish human," Dex snarled, preparing to fire again. But the delay had cost him his escape. Zrek appeared behind him, moving faster than Hyun thought possible for something so large. "You threatened our young," Zrek said, his voice deadly calm. There is no greater crime. The last thing Hyun saw before losing consciousness was the look of pure terror on Dex's face as Drek closed in. Hyun woke up in the hatchery medical area. His shoulder was bandaged, and the pain had dulled to a throb. Ji-ho sat nearby, monitoring his vital signs. "Welcome back," she said with a tired smile. "You've been out for 10 hours. The hatchlings?" Hyun asked, his voice rough. "Safe. The ones you protected are here." Ji-ho pointed to a small pool near his bed. 5 tiny Vrox hatchlings floated there, watching him with large yellow eyes. "And Dex. Alive, but I wouldn't want to be in his position. The Vrox have interesting ways of questioning prisoners." The door opened, and Carrick entered with Shrek and a Vrox Hyun hadn't seen before. This new Vrox had deep blue scales with silver patterns and carried herself with obvious authority. "This is Broodmother Narak," Carrick introduced, leader of the Northern Clan. "She has brought her warriors to help defend our world." Narak approached Hyun's bed. "You placed yourself between danger and hatchlings that were not your own," she said, her translator voice holding a note of wonder. "Why?" Hyun thought about it. "I didn't really think. I just couldn't let them be hurt." Narak turned to Karak. "You were right about these humans. They are different." A human in an Earth military uniform entered the room. "General Du," he introduced himself to Hyun. "Earth sent reinforcements when we lost contact. We're coordinating with the Vrox Defense Forces now." "The enemy ships?" Hyun asked. "Holding position at the edge of the system. We've identified them as belonging to the Zorn Coalition, a group of mid-tier species afraid of losing influence." General Du looked at the Vrox leaders. "They fear that if humans and Vrox become allies, the balance of power will shift." "They are right to fear it," Drek said, baring his teeth in what might have been a smile. Ambassador Kwan, a calm-faced woman who had arrived with General Du, stepped forward. "We've received messages from other predator species throughout the galaxy. Word has spread about humans helping the Vrox hatchlings." "What kind of messages?" Hyun asked, sitting up despite the pain. "Requests," Kwan said. "The Drakari, the Vex, even the solitary Morvians, all apex predator species, they all want human assistance with their young." Karek's head tilted in surprise. These species rarely speak to anyone outside their own kind. "Something interesting is happening," Dr. Su said, joining the conversation. "I've been studying why the hatchlings respond to humans. It's not just our antibodies that help them." She activated a holographic display showing human and Vrox biological readings. Apex predator species evolved to be highly sensitive to threats, Dr. Su explained. Their young are programmed to fear anything unfamiliar. But humans give off signals that these species recognize as safe or nurturing. Our body chemistry, our behavior patterns, they read as caretaker to their instincts. "But why humans specifically?" Ambassador Kwan asked. Elder Vrex hobbled forward, leaning on a staff. "Perhaps because humans evolved differently. You were both predator and prey. You learned to be fierce when needed, gentle when possible. The Coalition attacking us, they fear this connection," Broodmother Narak said. "They fear what will happen if the predator species unite with humans." A loud alarm sounded. General Du checked his communicator. "The enemy ships are moving. They're attacking both Vrox and human vessels." "We need a plan," Carrick said. "Our forces are strong, but divided. We've never fought alongside other species before." "Then it's time to learn," Ambassador Kwan said firmly. "General Du, coordinate with the Vrox military leaders. We need a unified defense strategy." "There's more," Ji-ho said, looking up from her medical display. "Our treatment is working. The hatchlings are recovering quickly." One of the small hatchlings in the nearby pool chirped and splashed, as if confirming her words. Its scales were bright and healthy. Karak looked at the recovering hatchling, then at the humans in the room. "For centuries, the Vrox have stood alone," Karak said. "We trusted no one. But today, we stand with humans. Today, we fight together. Outside, the first sounds of battle could be heard as ships engaged in orbit. But inside the hatchery, a tiny Vrox hatchling reached out from its pool, its small clawed hand grasping Hyun's finger in complete trust. It was the beginning of something new in the galaxy, something the coalition attacking them had never expected and couldn't hope to stop. The Vrox ship was unlike anything Hyun had ever seen. From the outside, it looked like a massive spike of dark metal. Inside, it was warm, dimly lit, and smelled of something like cinnamon and iron. Captain Min, the human transport pilot who had joined their team, whistled softly as they boarded. No wonder these ships cause panic when they appear. It's built like a weapon. Dr. Sue, a quiet xenogeneticist with quick eyes and careful hands, was the final addition to their team. She immediately began taking readings with her devices. The air has higher oxygen than we're used to, she noted, and trace elements I can't identify yet. A tall Vrox with silver-blue scales approached them. Unlike Karak, this one's posture was stiff, hostile. The translator pinned to Hyun's collar spoke. "I am Guardian Threk, head of security. You will follow me." The humans grabbed their equipment bags and followed Threk through winding corridors. Vrox crew members stopped to stare as they passed. Some made threatening gestures with their lower arms. "They don't seem happy we're here," Jaiho whispered to Hyun. "Would you be happy if aliens came to Earth to help human babies because we couldn't?" Hyun whispered back. Threk led them to a large circular room with viewing windows showing the stars outside. Karak waited for them there, along with several other Vrox. "We depart now," Karak announced. "The journey to our homeworld takes 3 days in your time." The ship hummed to life. Hyun felt a strange pulling sensation. Then the stars outside blurred as the ship entered faster than light travel. "You will want to know more about our people," Karak said. "While we travel, we will teach you." Over the next hours, the humans learned about Vrox society. They were shown images of the Vrox homeworld, a place of vast forests, deep oceans, and massive mountain ranges. The gravity was 1.3 times Earth's. The days were longer. The air was rich with spores and pollens that gave it a golden hue at dawn and dusk. "Your kind evolved from prey species," Threk said during one lesson, his voice holding something like disgust. "Weak, soft creatures that ran from danger." "Guardian," Karak warned. "It is true," Threk insisted. "They have no natural weapons, no claws, no real teeth. Their skin tears easily. And yet here they are," Karak replied, "traveling to a world where everything could kill them, to help children not their own." Threk made a dismissive gesture. "Pretty words, but can they be trusted?" The Mrox thought they could trust others, and they were hunted to extinction. "The Mrox?" Sang asked. Karak's eyes seemed to darken. "Our sister species. They once shared our homeworld. They were less aggressive, more trusting. Another species came, pretending to be friends. They hunted the Mrox until none remained." A heavy silence fell over the room. "That's why you isolated yourselves," Hyun realized. "To protect your people." "Yes." Karak's gaze fixed on Hyun. "We will never be prey." On the third day, tension rose. Threk approached Hyun while he was studying Vrox biological data in the ship's library area. "You," Threk growled, his massive form blocking the exit. "What is your real purpose here?" Hyun looked up calmly. "To help your hatchlings, as we agreed. Humans always want something. Territory. Resources. What do you want from us?" Hyun considered his answer carefully. "Knowledge. Understanding. And maybe a chance to show that not all species are like those who hurt your kind before." Threk leaned closer, his breath hot on Hyun's face. "If you harm one hatchling, I will tear you apart myself." "If we fail to help your hatchlings," Hyun replied steadily, "I would deserve it." Threk's eyes widened slightly. He had expected fear, not acceptance. After a long moment, he stepped back. "We arrive tomorrow," he said, then left. That night, the humans gathered in their shared quarters. "I'm starting to think this mission is more important than we realized," Captain Min said quietly. Dr. Su nodded. "This isn't just about sick alien babies. It's a test. If we succeed, we might just change how one of the most powerful species in the galaxy sees humanity." "And if we fail?" Jai-Ho asked. No one answered. They all knew what was at stake. Through the viewing port, they caught their first glimpse of the Vrok's homeworld, a blue-green sphere with swirling golden clouds. No human had ever seen it before. No human might ever see it again. 3 hours later, Hyun found himself in a small room with Director Jun, Ambassador Tae, and 2 new faces. Jai-Ho, a pediatric specialist with kind eyes and steady hands, had been called from the human medical facility on the station. Sung, a diplomatic expert known for handling difficult situations, completed the team. "This is unprecedented," Sang said, reviewing the information on his tablet. "The Vroks have never allowed any non-Vroks on their homeworld." Jai-Ho looked nervous. "I work with human children. What do I know about alien babies?" "Hatchlings," Hyun corrected gently. "The Vrok's young emerge from eggs." Ambassador Ta stood by the window, looking out at the stars. "Earth Command has given us permission to proceed. They see this as an opportunity we cannot miss, or a trap we're walking into," Director Jun muttered. The door slid open. A station official led in Bridmother Karek, now dressed in elaborate armor with glowing symbols. The Vroks seemed too large for the human-sized room. "Have you decided?" Karek asked without greeting. Ambassador Ta nodded. "We will help you. These are our specialists who will join the team." Karek's yellow eyes studied each human carefully. When she looked at Jai-Ho, her head tilted slightly. "You care for young ones," Karek said. It wasn't a question. Jai-Ho swallowed hard. "Yes. I'm a pediatric specialist." "Good. Our hatchlings will sense this in you." Hyun stepped forward. "Before we leave, we need to understand what's happening. How did this illness start? What are the symptoms?" Karek settled her massive body into a seated position on the floor, since no chair would hold her. "It began 3 cycles ago. The hatchlings emerged healthy from their eggs, but after the first molting, they grew weak. They refuse food. Their scales lose color. They make sounds of distress that no comfort from us can soothe." Karek's voice remained flat, but her upper hands clenched tightly. "And you've tried all your medical technology?" Director Jun asked. "We are not primitives," Karek said, a slight rumble entering her voice. "Our healers have tried everything. The hatchlings improve slightly, then worsen again." "Why humans?" Sang asked directly. "What makes you think we can help?" Karek's eyes narrowed. "We have been watching your species for decades. We see how your young trust you completely, how you care for the sick and weak instead of culling them, as most predator species do. You've been watching us." Director Jun looked alarmed. "Of course, all species study potential threats or allies." "And which are we?" Sang asked carefully. Karek made a sound that the translator didn't convert. It might have been laughter. "Perhaps both. But right now, you are our hope." She reached into a pouch on her armor and withdrew a small device. She placed it on the floor and activated it. A hologram appeared, showing a human mining engineer. He was sitting on the ground, and around him were 3 small Vroks hatchlings. They looked sick, their scales dull. But they were curled close to the human, making small chirping sounds. "This human strayed near a hidden outpost," Karek explained. "Our warriors were about to kill him when they noticed the hatchling's response. For the first time in weeks, they showed interest in food. Their life signs improved." The humans watched in silence as the recording showed the hatchlings falling asleep against the confused-looking human. "We tested other species secretly. None produced this effect. Something about humans, your scent, your body heat, perhaps your electromagnetic field, soothes our young." "What happened to this man?" Ambassador Tai asked, pointing to the hologram. We returned him to his ship with no memory of the encounter. He was unharmed. Hyun studied the hologram closely. The hatchlings are drawn to him, almost like he was one of our brood parents. Karak finished. This is why we need you. Our entire next generation is at risk. Without them, the Vrocs face extinction. The room fell silent as the weight of Karak's words sank in. Our ship leaves in 2 hours, Karak said, rising to her full height. Be ready. She strode from the room, her clawed feet clicking on the station floor. Well, Jaiho said after a moment, I guess I'd better pack my medical kit. Hyun nodded, his mind racing with questions. What was it about humans that these fearsome predators needed? And what would they find on a world no outsider had ever seen? The battle above Vrox Prime raged for 2 days. Human ships fought alongside Vrox vessels, protecting the planet from the Zorn Coalition forces. On the ground, preparations were made for a possible invasion. Jin, a human tactical expert who had arrived with General Du, worked with Supreme Huntress Krell, the highest military leader of all Vrox clans. They made an odd pair, the small, quiet human woman and the massive, battle-scarred Vrox warrior. They will target the hatcheries, Krell said, pointing to a map of Vrox Prime. It is what I would do if I wanted to cripple us. Then we make the hatcheries the hardest targets, Jin replied. She outlined a defensive plan that used the natural cave systems to create traps and choke points. Krell studied the humans' plans. You think like a Vrox, she said, approval in her voice. Meanwhile, in orbit, Chancellor Zorb, leader of the Zorn Coalition, sent a message to both human and Vrox forces. This alliance is an abomination, his hologram declared. The natural order must be preserved. Surrender the humans, and the Vrox may survive. Captain Min, commanding one of the human ships, looked to Commander Hack for instructions. We stand with our allies, Hack replied simply. The coalition launched their main attack at dawn. 50 ships dove toward the planet's surface. Their target was clear, the main hatchery. They're breaking through Sector 7, a Vrox tactical officer reported. Jin looked at the displays, her mind racing. We need to split their forces, she said to Krell. Make them think we're weaker than we are. Krell nodded and gave orders. A small group of Vrox ships appeared to flee, drawing away part of the coalition fleet. Now, Jin said. Human and Vrox ships emerged from hiding behind Vrox Prime's largest moon. They caught the separated coalition forces from behind. On the ground, Hyun had recovered enough to help with the evacuation of the most vulnerable hatchlings to deeper caverns. Dr. Su and Ji-ho continued treating the sick young ones, even as the sounds of battle grew closer. They've landed forces near the secondary entrance, Jun reported, rushing into the hatchery. We need to be ready. The humans and Vrox prepared for a last stand. Hyun was surprised to see Threk hand human weapons to Jun and the other human security officers. You fight well for soft creatures, Threk said. It was the closest thing to a compliment he had ever given them. The first explosion rocked the outer doors. Coalition forces were trying to break through. Stay with the hatchlings, Threk told the human medical team. We will hold them back. But the coalition had numbers on their side. Soon, the sound of fighting was just outside the hatchery's main chamber. A massive blast tore through the final door. Coalition soldiers poured in, led by Chancellor Zord himself, a tall, thin alien with a face like polished stone. This ends now, Zorb declared, raising his weapon toward the pools of hatchlings. What happened next would be told in stories across the galaxy for generations. The humans, scientists, doctors, and soldiers alike formed a living wall in front of the hatchling pools. Behind them stood the Vrox warriors, a second line of defense. You'll have to kill us first, Hyun said simply. Zorb laughed coldly. That can be arranged. He fired his weapon, but the shot never reached the humans. Broodmother Karek leaped forward with impossible speed, taking the blast meant for Hyun. The Vrox roared in fury. The battle that followed was short but fierce. Human tactics combined with Vrox strength created a fighting force unlike anything the coalition had expected. Jun and Threk fought back to back, covering each other's weaknesses. Jin called out positions, directing Vrox warriors to where they were most needed. When the fighting was done, Chancellor Zorb knelt as a prisoner, surrounded by human and Vrox guards. Most of his forces were captured or destroyed. "Kill me and be done with it," Zorb spat at Krell. The Supreme Huntress looked to Jin, who shook her head slightly. "No," Krell said, surprising everyone. "You will live to witness what you feared, humans and Vrox working together. You will return to your people and tell them what you have seen here today." "Mercy is weakness," Zorb hissed. "No," Hyun said, helping a wounded Karak to her feet. "Sometimes mercy is the greatest strength of all." The Vrox warriors watched, learning something new about their human allies, something that would change their culture forever. The landing was rough. The Vrox ship descended through golden clouds and touched down in a massive clearing surrounded by trees taller than Earth's skyscrapers. "Welcome to Vrox Prime," Karak said as the exit ramp lowered. The humans took their first breath of alien air. It was sweet and thick, like breathing through honey. "Oxygen levels are high but safe," Dr. Sue confirmed, checking her instruments. "We won't need breathing masks." Armed Vrox guards surrounded them as they walked down the ramp. In the distance, a city of stone and metal rose from the forest. The buildings were angular and tall, with few windows. "The hatchery is underground," Karak explained, leading them toward a large opening in the ground. "It is our most sacred place." The tunnel sloped downward, lit by glowing stones embedded in the walls. After walking for 10 minutes, they reached a massive door carved with symbols. "Only brood parents are normally allowed beyond this point," Karak said. "You are the first outsiders to enter." The door swung open, revealing a vast cavern. The ceiling glittered with more of the glowing stones, creating a soft light like stars. But it was what filled the cavern that made the humans gasp. Hundreds of small pools dotted the floor. In each pool, tiny Vrox hatchlings floated in clear liquid. Adult Vrox moved between the pools, checking on the young. Many of the hatchlings looked weak, their scales dull and their movements slow. A tall Vrox with pale green scales approached them. "I am caretaker Mrek," the translator spoke. "I oversee the central hatchery." Hyun noticed that Mrek's movements were gentler than other Vrox they had met. When one of the nearby hatchlings made a chirping sound, Mrek immediately turned to check on it. "Please show us the sickest ones first," Jai-Ho said, already opening her medical kit. Mrek led them deeper into the cavern. Here, the pools were fewer, but each had 2 or 3 adult Vrox attending to the hatchlings inside. "These hatched 20 days ago," Mrek explained. "They should be active, learning to breathe air for longer periods. Instead, they barely move." Dr. Sue and researcher Jay, a human biochemist who had been mostly quiet during the journey, began taking samples of the pool water. Ji-Ho knelt beside one pool where a particularly small hatchling floated listlessly. "May I?" she asked, looking at Mrek. After a moment's hesitation, Mrek nodded. Jai-Ho gently touched the water. The hatchling immediately turned toward her hand. Its large eyes blinked, and it made a soft trilling sound. "It's responding to you," Mrek said, surprise clear in the translator's mechanical voice. In courage, Jai-Ho carefully lifted the tiny Vrox from the water. It was no bigger than a human baby, with soft scales and tiny claws. It nuzzled against Jai-Ho's hand, making more trilling sounds. "Their body temperature is dropping," Jai-Ho observed. "That's why they're seeking warmth." Around the room, the adult Vrox had gone silent, watching the human hold one of their young. Threk stepped forward as if to intervene, but Karak held up a hand to stop him. "The human brings no harm," Karak said. Eon, a human nurse who specialized in critical care, joined Jai-Ho. The scales are changing color where she's touching it, Yun pointed out. They're getting brighter. Dr. Su looked up from her analysis. Their bodies are not processing nutrients correctly. Something is blocking the key metabolic pathway. Could it be something new in their environment? Hyun asked. When did you first notice the problems? Mrek tilted his head in thought. After we received new materials for the hatchery pools, the Galactic Union provided special filters as part of a trade agreement. Researcher Ja looked up sharply. New materials. Can we see them? As Mrek led Jai and Dr. Su to examine the filters, something remarkable was happening around Jao. Other hatchlings in nearby pools were moving toward her, drawn by some invisible force. They sense her, an adult Vrox whispered. They trust her. Hyun watched as more of the human team began to interact with the hatchlings. Each time a human touched one, it responded with increased movement and brighter scales. It's not just physical, Hyun realized. The hatchlings are forming a bond with us. In one corner, a Vrox was singing a low, rumbling song to a hatchling. The sound was surprisingly gentle coming from such a fearsome creature. I didn't expect that, Captain Min said quietly to Hyun. They sing to their babies. Maybe we're not so different after all, Hyun replied, watching as the sickest hatchling curled contentedly in Jaiho's gentle hands, its scales now glowing with renewed life. By the third day in the hatchery, the human team had established a routine. Dr. Su and researcher Jad worked in a makeshift lab, analyzing samples. Jeho and Ian spent hours with the sickest hatchlings. Hyun studied Vrox biology and worked with caretaker Mrek to understand normal hatchling development. Look at this, Dr. Su called out, waving Hyun over to her workstation. The new filters contain traces of a metal alloy I've never seen before. Hyun peered at the microscope screen. Is it toxic? Not to most species, but for Vrox hatchlings, it seems to block the absorption of a key mineral they need. She pointed to another screen showing a hatchling's blood sample. Their bodies are fighting themselves, trying to get nutrients that aren't there. Researcher Ja looked troubled. This alloy is artificial. Someone engineered it specifically. Before Hyun could respond, the main door to the hatchery opened. A tall, thin alien with pale skin and 4 eyes entered, accompanied by several Vrox guards. Trade Minister Dex, Karek said, stepping forward. We did not expect representatives from the Galactic Union today. Dex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. When I heard that humans were brought to Vrox Prime, I had to see for myself. His gaze swept over the human team. Such an unusual development. Jun, a human security officer who had been quietly watching over the team, moved closer to Hyun. Something in Jun's posture suggested he didn't trust the new arrival. Minister Dex provided the filtration technology. Mrek explained to the humans. A gift from the Galactic Union. Dr. Su and Jay exchanged a look. And how are the hatchlings responding to human presence? Dex asked, his voice smooth. Very well, Karek answered. The humans have made progress in understanding the illness. Wonderful news, Dex said, but his eyes remained cold. I would like to see your research data, if I may. Before anyone could answer, an ancient Vrox with faded gray scales hobbled into the room. The other Vrox immediately bowed their heads in respect. Elder Vrex, Karek said with surprise. You honor us with your presence. Elder Vrex ignored Karek, fixing his gaze on Trade Minister Dex. You were not invited to the sacred hatchery, the old Vrox said, his voice surprisingly strong. Why have you come? Dex smiled thinly, simply checking on our trade partner's well-being. Elder Vrex turned to Hyun. Have you found the cause of the illness? Before Hyun could answer, Dr. Su spoke up. We believe it's linked to the new filtration system. It contains metals that are harmful to Vrox hatchlings. Elder Vrex's eyes narrowed. The filters that Minister Dex insisted we install. The room grew tense. Dex's face remained calm, but Hyun noticed his lower hands clenching. A regrettable oversight, I'm sure, Dex said smoothly. Perhaps the humans can suggest improvements. Dr. Su nodded cautiously. We're developing a treatment now. The hatchlings need human antibodies to help clear the toxin. Human blood? Karak asked, surprised. Just a small amount from each of us, Jai-Ho explained. Something in our blood bonds with the toxic metal and makes it harmless. Fascinating, Dex said. His eyes darted to the door. I should report this progress to the council immediately. As Dex turned to leave, Jun stepped forward. Minister, you dropped something. He held up a small device. Dex froze. That isn't mine. Jun pressed a button on the device. A hologram appeared, showing Dex speaking with shadowy figures. The words were clear. The contamination is working as planned. The Vrox population will decline by 60% within 3 generations. The room erupted in chaos. Threk roared and lunged toward Dex, but the minister was faster. He threw a small object to the ground. Smoke filled the room. When it cleared, Dex was gone. He sabotaged our communications, Jun reported, checking his equipment. We can't contact the station or Earth. Karak's scales had darkened with rage. The Galactic Union has declared war on the Vrox by attacking our young. Not the whole Union, Hen said quickly. Just Dex and whoever he's working with. We need to move quickly, Dr. Su said. We can still save the hatchlings with the treatment we've developed. The humans looked at each other, then at the pools of sick hatchlings. Without a word, they rolled up their sleeves, ready to give their blood to save alien children. Why would you still help us? Elder Vrex asked, watching them with ancient eyes. Because they're children, Jai-Ho said simply. And they need us. Hyun checked his uniform one last time before entering the meeting room. His hands were sweating. This was not a normal day at the Earth Embassy. Stop fidgeting, Director Jun said, fixing his own collar. They're just another alien species. Hyun wanted to laugh. The Vrox were not just another species. They were the nightmare predators of the galaxy. 2.5 meters tall, covered in armor-like scales, with teeth that could crush steel. Most aliens crossed to the other side of the station when they saw a Vrox coming. They asked for us specifically, Ken said quietly. No one knows why. The door slid open. Inside, Ambassador Tai was already seated at the large round table. Across from her sat 3 Vrox. Their massive bodies made the station's furniture look like toys. The lead Vrox's scales were deep red with black markings. This one wore elaborate metal bands on its 4 arms. The 2 others were slightly smaller, with blue-gray scales. All 3 had their razor-sharp teeth partly visible. This is Hyun, our xenobiologist, Ambassador Ta said, her voice calm despite the tension in the room. And Director Jun, head of our science division. The red Vrox made a rumbling sound. The translator pinned to Hyun's collar spoke. I am Emissary Karak. These are my guards. We have waited many cycles to meet humans face to face. Hyun took his seat slowly. He had studied the Vrox for years, but books and videos didn't capture how they smelled, like iron and something wild, or how their yellow eyes seemed to watch everything at once. We are honored, Ambassador Ta said, but surprised. The Vrox have avoided contact with most species for centuries. Karak leaned forward. The guards tensed, but made no move. We have been watching your kind since you first reached the stars, Karak said. Your species is unique. Director Jun shifted in his seat. May I ask why you requested this meeting, and why you asked for a xenobiologist to be present? The Vrox exchanged looks. Something passed between them that the humans couldn't read. Our young are dying, Karak said simply. The room went silent. Even in the short time humans had been part of the Galactic Union, everyone learned one thing about the Vrox. They were fiercely protective of their offspring. Some species said Vrox had destroyed entire planets when their breeding grounds were threatened. I'm sorry to hear that, Hyun said, finding his voice. Is it a disease? Karak's upper hands made a gesture the translator couldn't interpret. Yes and no. Something is happening to our hatchlings. Our healers cannot stop it. They grow weak. They lose the will to live. Ambassador Tai leaned forward. And you believe we can help somehow? We know you can, Carrick said. The certainty in the alien's voice was chilling. Humans have something we need. What would that be? Director June asked. Your touch. Your scent. Carrick seemed to struggle with the concept. Your gentleness. Hyun blinked in surprise. The fierce Vrox, feared across thousands of star systems, were asking for human gentleness. Carrick continued, we have observed how your species cares for your young, how your children trust you. Our young respond to humans in ways they respond to no other species outside our own. How could you know that? Hyun asked before he could stop himself. The Vrox's mouth stretched in what might have been a smile or a threat display. We have tested this. When our first young began to sicken, we brought in many species secretly. Only when a human mining crew came near our space did the sick hatchlings show improvement. Ambassador Tay's face showed no reaction, but Hyun knew she was calculating the diplomatic implications. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage. Helping the Vrox could lift Earth's standing, or make powerful enemies of the Vrox's rivals. We need your help, Carrick said, and the translator couldn't hide the desperation in the alien's voice. We need humans to come to our world. No outsider has ever been permitted there, but we would trust you with our most precious treasure, our young. Hyun felt the weight of history in the room. Humans, barely accepted in space, were being asked to save the children of the galaxy's most feared predators. We will need to discuss this, Ambassador Ta said carefully. Do not take long, Carrick said. Our hatchlings cannot wait. We have a ship ready to take you to our homeworld immediately. The humans exchanged glances. No one had expected this. The future of two species now hung in the balance. 1 year after the Battle of Vrox Prime, Hyun stood on the observation deck of the new galactic nursery station. The massive space station orbited a neutral point between Earth and Vrox Prime. Through the large viewing window, he could see ships from a dozen different species coming and going. Quite a change from last year, Director Kyung said, joining him at the window. She had been appointed to lead the new Interspecies Care Initiative, a joint project between humans and 7 predator species. I never imagined anything like this, Hyun admitted. The station housed medical facilities, research labs, and most importantly, nursery spaces for the young of various predator species. Human caregivers worked alongside alien parents, sharing knowledge and forming bonds that would have seemed impossible before. Teacher 1 is starting the cultural exchange class, Kyung reminded him. You don't want to miss it. Hyun nodded and made his way through the station's wide corridors. They had been designed to accommodate species of all sizes, from humans to the massive Vrox. In a large circular room, a gentle-voiced human teacher stood surrounded by a dozen young Vrox. They were older than hatchlings now, with brighter scales and more defined features. Among them was Trick, a small Vrox with unusual golden patterns on his scales. Trick, your human father is here, one said, pointing to Hyun. The young Vrox rushed to Hyun, moving with the speed and grace of his species. He stopped just short of tackling Hyun, showing impressive control for one so young. Father, today we learn human songs, Trick said, his translator voice excited. Hyun smiled and placed a hand on Trick's head, a gesture the young Vrox leaned into. After the battle, many Vrox hatchlings had been orphaned. In an unprecedented move, the Vrox Supreme Council had allowed humans to adopt some of them. Hyun had been the first to volunteer. Ambassador Tai is waiting for you in the conference room, one reminded Hyun. The new Galactic Accords signing is today. After joining the class for one song, Hyun made his way to the conference room. There, representatives from dozens of species had gathered. At the center table sat Ambassador Tai, now promoted to Earth's chief diplomatic officer, alongside Broodmother Carrick, who had recovered from her wounds. Carrick nodded to Hyun as he entered. The scar from Zorb's weapon was visible on her scales, a reminder of how much had changed. The delegates from the Drakari and Morgans have arrived, Tai informed them. They're eager to join the alliance. And the coalition worlds? Hyun asked. Observing only for now, Tai replied. But Chancellor Zorb has been replaced. The new leadership seems more open to cooperation. The signing ceremony began. One by one, representatives of Earth, Vrox Prime, and 5 other predator species signed the new galactic accords. It created a third power block in the galaxy, balancing the old rivalries that had led to conflict. After the ceremony, Carrick approached Hyun privately. The Supreme Council has decided to bestow a title upon humanity, she said formally. From this day forward, humans will be known to all Vrox as the gentle predators, the highest honor our culture can give. I'm honored, Hyun said, truly touched. But we're just doing what comes naturally to us. That is precisely why the title fits, Carrick replied. Your nature balances ours. Together, we are stronger. Later that day, Hyun took Trick to see the newest addition to the station, a memorial wall showing images of humans and Vrox who had fought together. At the center was a picture of Jaiho holding a sick hatchling on that first day in the hatchery. Is that when it all changed? Trick asked, studying the image. Yes, Hyun said. That's when we learned that sometimes the fiercest creatures in the galaxy need gentleness as much as strength. As they stood there, a Drakari parent approached, holding a small, trembling youngling. The Drakari were known for their venom and hunting prowess. The human doctor said you might help. The Drakari said hesitantly, my child fears medical treatments. Without hesitation, Hyun knelt down to the youngling's level. Hello there, he said softly. Would you like to meet my son, Trick? The Drakari child looked at Trick with wide eyes. Trick stepped forward carefully. Humans helped me when I was sick too, Trick told the young Drakari. They make things better. The Drakari child reached out a tentative hand toward Hyun. And so it continued, across the stars. A new understanding between species, built on the simple truth that even the galaxy's most savage beasts trusted humans with their young.